All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition about the truth about your health, where we teach exhausted and burnt out adults the truth about their health so that they can get their energy back quickly. And we're joined with a friend and fellow presenter, Catharine Arnston, who is the algae wellness expert and founder, CEO of EnergyBits. She is in the wellness, nutrition, beauty, biohacking, mitochondria, and longevity industry. She's nationally recognized as a thought leader, seasoned corporate executive, experienced entrepreneur, and most importantly, sought out after speaker. She's got her MBA, BA, and is a board certified health coach. Catharine, I can go on, but we want to get to the interview today.
That's right.
So, thank you so much for joining us.
Algae is the star of the show. I'm just the voice for algae. But thank you, Dr. Joel, for having me here. And it's great because I keep seeing you at conferences. We're going to all the same places, which is exciting, and a confirmation that we're on the right path, so we can help others.
Well, yeah, and it's nice to share our unique area of background so that we fill in the shades of gray with the things that we're learning, and it's all tides lift all boats, if you go. Yes. I guess the saying goes. Yes. And so I always like to start off, Catharine, with your own personal story and how you got into from it being an executive into being the algae spokeswoman and health coach. So tell us about your own personal journey.
Yeah, well, it's quite a transition, although I'm finding that just about everybody in the wellness industry has a really great story about how they got there, and mine's no different. As you mentioned, I do have an MBA. I'm actually Canadian, although I've lived in the United States for 33 years. I live in Boston right now and have been here for that length of time. But I mentioned Canada because I had a corporate career, was doing well enough. And my younger sister, who I'm very close to in Canada, 13 years ago, developed breast cancer. Now, I wanted to assure everyone, first of all, that she's fine and cancer-free. But when she was preparing for her chemo, her oncologist, who happened to be a woman, recommended she change her diet to an alkaline diet because she said it would help with her healing. Now, they didn't tell her what it was or why it was good for her. So the first call she made was to me, her big sister, who loves her. I knew nothing about nutrition, but I'm a really good researcher and I'm very motivated to make things, right in the world. So I said, I don't know what this stuff is, but I will find out. It turned out to be mostly a plant-based diet because of the phytonutrients and the chlorophyll that builds your immune system. So I did a lot of research. She followed my advice. She got rid of certain foods, acidic foods, or like dairy and processed foods and sugar for sure. And she went through her chemo and she did heal. Now, in the process of helping her learn what to eat and what not to eat, I did a pretty deep dive for the first time of my life in PubMed and NIH articles. And I read about 100 of them and I read about 10 books. And they were all talking about plant-based nutrition, and nobody was talking about it in the mainstream 13 years ago. So I thought, well, I don't have any credentials, but I've seen the writing on the wall. I think people need to know about this. So I gave up my corporate career of 25 years, went back to school, studied nutrition at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. It was just a 1-year health coaching certificate, but it gave me some background. And then I taught plant-based nutrition for a year at corporations and hospitals. Basically, anybody would let me in. And this is where my true epiphany happened that led me to algae. Because as I was teaching people the importance of eating more vegetables, they laughed at me and they said, well, you're not telling me anything new. My mother's been trying to get me to eat vegetables since I was a kid. But it's too much work. They're heavy to carry home from the grocery store. They take a long time to clean, to cook, to eat. There's endless arguments at the dinner table with kids, husbands. So I thought, okay, if everyone knows the importance of the plants and the nutrients in the plants, but it's too much work for them to cook them and eat them, I need to find something that's fast and easy that gives them the nutrition that they need. So back to the drawing board I went and I looked at everything that I had found for my sister, and took months before I circled back to algae. And that's when the miracle happened, because first of all, algae is the most alkaline food in the world. We can talk a little bit, if you want, about the importance of cellular pH and how it has to skew slightly to alkalinity or you attract cancer, which is why my sister's oncologist had recommended an alkaline diet. Algae is also the most nutrient dense food in the world. And that's not my opinion. We have a quote from NASA that says 1 gram of algae has the nutrition equal to 1,000 grams of fruits or vegetables, 1 to 1,000. And we're going to talk about how that kind of concentration can exist, because microalgae is microscopic in size. Something like 1 million cells would fit on the head of a pin. So you can start to see when you gather them together in these little tablets that we have, that we make available, why it's so concentrated. So alkaline, concentrated nutrition. It's got the highest protein in the world. The United Nations has endorsed it since 1974, which is almost 50 years, as the answer to world hunger, because spirulina algae has 3 times the amount of protein as steak, and it's a complete protein, it has 18 of the 20 aminos. Also, algae is the most studied food in the world. 2 important points there. First of all, it's food. It is not a supplement. It is grown in fresh water. I'm showing Joel some pictures of a couple of algae farms. This is the spirulina farm, and this one's a chlorella farm, which are the 2 algae we're going to be talking about today. You can't show me a supplement farm because they don't exist. And the reason I mention that is because most supplements are made from extracts, and they're made in factories using high heat. And the extracts don't exist in nature that way. And high heat kills nutrients or scrambles them. So your body basically can't recognize them and can't absorb them. Whereas when you eat food like algae, especially algae, which is the most nutrient dense food in the world, your body recognizes it, it's bioavailable, and it gets to work. So that's number one. Number two, the fact there's 100,000, this is a big number. We're not talking 550, 500, or even 5,000. 100,000 means what I'm telling you today has been validated and it's on rock solid science foundation. This is science-based knowledge. The problem is, in America, none of the scientists like to talk to other scientists. So none of this science has made its way out to you, to practitioners in Asia, but not the next point, that algae has been used safely on a daily basis in Asia for over 50 years. The Japanese don't leave their house without chlorella algae, which is one of the algae we're going to talk about today. It is a multi-billion, that's with a B, $billion agricultural crop. So it's almost as big as the beef industry is here. And yet nobody in North America knows what it is truly or why it works. I mean, you've probably heard of spirulina. Maybe some of you put it in your smoothies, but you're not really sure why, or it's good for you, but you're not sure why, and you're not sure exactly what it does. And I am going to be here to tell you what exactly it does and why exactly you need to have it, certainly at this time in our juncture in our society where our food is so damaged and there's no nutrients and we're covered with loaded with toxins. So when I found out that it was endorsed by international agencies, studied and documented by scientists, used safely in other countries for 50, 60 years, where it's a huge industry. And the only problem with algae, 2 problems. 1, nobody outside of Asia seemed to know what it was or why it worked. And 2, the quality mostly was pretty poor. It came mostly from China. So, and the best part, which I forgot even to mention, is that when it comes in tiny little tablets. I'm showing Joel these little containers that have some of our tablets in them. Spirulina, which is a blue-green algae, and chlorella, which is a green algae. These tablets are about the size of a baby aspirin, and each tablet has the same nutrition as an entire plate of vegetables. 1 tablet the size of a baby aspirin has the same nutrition as a heaping plate of vegetables that, drum roll, you didn't have to carry home from the grocery store, clean, cook, or eat. Because if you swallow 5 or 10 of these, or even 2 or 3 if you want, you are getting all the nutrition, the plant-based nutrition that you and your family need to be healthy. And it's effortless. If you can drink water, we have found the answer. This is the ultimate fast food, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't get any faster and it doesn't get any purer. I'll tell you a little bit about why our algae is considered the best, because it is pure. We do third-party lab tests, and we only sell through doctors like Dr. Joel, and functional medicine and chiropractors. We don't sell through retail. So if you're looking for an answer to give you the nutrition that you need in a way that's fast and pure and safe enough for newborns, this is it. Spirulina for nourishment, and chlorella for building your immune system and pulling out toxins. And we'll go into greater detail. So I am just so thrilled to share that these 2 algae with you and your community, because other places around the world, like Asia, have been benefiting from them for 50 years, and it's your turn. It's your turn to benefit from them too.
Right. Well, at least the proof is in the pudding. You can't say that the CEO of the EnergyBits doesn't have energy with that answer there. So that's awesome. As far as I want to rewind back though, I do want to go into what was it, Catharine, that I'm always amazed that you felt charged to help your sister when the doctor told you, hey, go into alkaline diet, but didn't really give you the insight to it. But feeling charged and leaving a career of 25 years is a lot of different things. So what was it that made you do that?
Yeah, well, I've always been, I always need to know why. And I've been like this all my life. I love to read, and I love to solve problems, and I love to help people. Just to show you how much I used to read, when we used to go on, summer vacation, my mother would buy me like about a dozen books, and she would have to hide them from me, but I would find them and read them. And then she'd have to go buy me another dozen, because that was, I just love reading. So it's ironic that I've turned into a bit of a scientist, even though I have no science background, because I love to read these complex documents and be able to explain them to people. But what really motivated me is like, I'm not someone who just wants information. I want to put that information to good use. And the best analogy I can come up with is, well, there's two. One is, if you owned a major piece of art, a Picasso or a Van Gogh, would you just have it in your home, or would you feel motivated to donate it to an art gallery, a public art gallery where the world could enjoy it as well? And I'm the second person. So as I learned the important value and health benefits of plant-based nutrition, I felt that I had discovered something that was really powerful, and it was my obligation to share it. It's sort of like if you see someone drowning in a pool, do you jump in or not? And I tried to tell the universe, pick somebody else. I don't have a background in science. I mean, it took me so long to get started because I had to cross-reference 20 times every time there was some sort of biochemical or nutritional term, because I didn't have the background. But I don't know, this is my path. I tell people I've never been so happy. I've never had so little money, but I am so what gets me up in the morning, gets me so charged. I mean, I have been teaching people about this now for 12 years, and I am, if not as excited about it, I am more excited about it now, because now I'm confident about my knowledge. I'm confident about my science, and I write so many papers. So I just felt that I had been picked, algae picked me, because it's been around for 4 billion years. It's the first life on Earth. And I felt I had a spiritual path, a spiritual obligation. Somewhere I made a promise I was going to get algae to the world. And that's what's kept me going. And so here I am, still doing it.
Right. And I think also too, when you say the stars and the moon collide, the fact that, and you and I have talked about this, at the conferences, where traditional medicine, it's great that a really smart oncologist that can really make a difference with your cancer diagnosis is telling you a blanket statement of do something, but doesn't really have the power behind it in terms of make a pH diet, but not really giving you the insight. And then on top of that, having a whole culture in Asia that have embraced it, yet there is a whole culture in the West that hasn't. What did those factor into it too, Catharine, in terms of why is it not accepted here, and why is it accepted there? And did you see that opportunity as well?
Well, we can talk forever about the lack of nutritional knowledge of the traditional medical community, and that's a whole nother story. And I don't want to go down that path because that has negativity. I'm a positivity person. But the main reason why I think, there's a couple of main reasons why people in America don't know about algae, is that it's just not grown here. And it started, the whole algae industry started in Japan back in the 50s and 60s. They had to figure out how to grow it for mass consumption. It was discovered in the late 1800s to have the highest protein, but it wasn't until the Japanese, and there's a longer story about why they're the ones that did it, but nonetheless, that's where the industry started, and that's where it evolved. And after 10 years of them experimenting with, it was chlorella, then Korea, Taiwan, China, India, all the Asian countries started growing it. And so when you're in Japan, for example, maybe when you ride your bicycle to school, you'll go by multiple algae farms. When you're riding the train to work, you'll be going by a bunch of algae farms. It's just part of their day-to-day existence. They put it in all of their foods. Like we put chia seed and other things in all of our foods, but they put algae because it's a main crop there. So we just didn't grow up with it. We grew up with wheat and corn, and I live in Boston where Dunkin' Donuts is based. And so we're quite see Dunkin' Donuts trucks going by, but we never see an algae truck go by. We never drive by an algae farm. So it's complete lack of awareness is number one. So, and my goal is to grow it here and turn it into a major industry. It's already happening in other countries, but we're very slow on the draw. But one good thing is in 2019, so about 3 years ago, the US government released the first Algae Agricultural Act as part of the Farm Bill to encourage farmers to grow algae here, because even they have realized it's the most nutrient dense food in the world, is most sustainable, eco-friendly, and none of it's grown here. So that's number one. Nobody here has grown up with it, but I point out to people, algae isn't new, it's just new to you. And it's no different than, a few years ago, you didn't know about chia seed, you didn't know about quinoa, you didn't know about matcha, you didn't know about CBD or even collagen powder. But these were all things and food types, mushrooms that have been used for centuries in other countries, but it took somebody to educate Americans about what it is and how to make a choice and to start how to incorporate it into their lifestyle. So that's one of the things that we're doing. And the second thing is algae, as I said, is a type of vegetable. So it's not a drug, it's not a pill. So there's no patents that you can get on it. So the biotech companies weren't interested in pursuing it. I'm sure they're aware of it. And food companies, if anybody's had any experience with the food industry, that they never launch anything new. They wait for a little entrepreneur to discover something that is helpful. And, we pour us entrepreneurs, we pour our heart and soul into building something and educating people. And then once it's been proven that the consumers want it and need it, then the food companies generally acquire them, but they never launch a new category. This is considered a new category. So that's why it's just not around. The main one being it just isn't grown here. So people, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right. No, it makes sense. I remember just the only thing I would think of as an algae as a kid and before I knew what I know was in a pool where if it wasn't properly cleaned, there'd be algae growing on the side of the pool or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's probably a good segue to tell people what algae is. And before I do that, I do want to let you know that algae only shows up when there are bacteria. So whether it's an algae bloom in your beach, closing the beach, or in your swimming pool, it's because there's toxins there. On the beach, maybe there's runoff from a chemical plant or some people peeing in the water or something. But algae is the cleanup crew. It's just that it's there after something negative has already entered into the water. And so the algae kill bacteria. So they get the bum rap, even though they're the cleanup crew. But I will tell you, algae is used in virtually every single water treatment plant in North America for this reason. They run all the water through algae because it kills bacteria. But anyway, so the thing about algae is that it is everywhere. And there's two main types of algae. One is called macroalgae and the other one is microalgae. We're going to be talking mostly only about microalgae, but let me tell you what macroalgae is. It's also known as seaweed or dulse or kelp. This is the big stringy stuff that washes up on shore, high in fiber, high in iodine, because it's only in the ocean. That's why it's called seaweed, but virtually no nutrition. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking about microalgae, which is called microalgae because, as I mentioned at the very beginning, it's microscopic in size, something like 1 million cells could fit on the head of a pin. And microalgae is everywhere. Seaweed is only in the sea. Microalgae is in the rivers, the lakes, the streams, the soil, your swimming pool, your aquarium, and it feeds everything. Now, there's thousands and tens of thousands of strains of microalgae, but the two most well-known two are blue-green and green algae. And one strain of blue-green algae is spirulina, and one strain of chlorella of green algae is chlorella. And those are the two that we're going to be talking about today. And these are the two that are harvested as food crops in fresh water. It doesn't matter whether you're buying your chlorella or your spirulina from Target or Walmart or from us. They're all grown in fresh water, not from the ocean. So if you read about a toxic blue-green algae, that's fine. That's another type of blue-green algae. That's not what we're talking about today. These two crops, spirulina and chlorella, are in fresh water. And of course, the quality of the water determines the quality of the algae, among other things. And so we grow ours in triple filtered spring mountain water, and then we air dry it without high heat to preserve the enzymes. And I made that decision, when I started the company 12 years ago. And when we get to mitochondria health, you're going to find out how important that is, because there is a very important antioxidant called superoxide dismutase, which is a mouthful, also known as SOD, that has been shown to be one of the few antioxidants that can get into your inner membrane of your mitochondria to protect your mitochondria DNA from free radical damage. But there's virtually no food source of this superoxide dismutase except in algae, and only if it hasn't been dried with high heat. And virtually every other company uses high heat to dry their algae because they're lower priced, high volume companies, and they need to get to market quickly. So they use high heat. So their algae does not contain any live superoxide dismutase, but getting ahead of myself there. But anyways, so yes, there's spirulina and chlorella are the two main algae that are harvested as vegetables. It's called hydroponic growth. Lettuce, tomatoes, even kale are often grown in water.
So good overview, Catherine. As far as my inquisitive mind wants to know about the different qualities of water, and given that it's the cleanup crew, would it make the hormetic stress of maybe the not so great water, given that its main definition of function is to clean up, would it make it that much more robust, or is it a problem from having, I guess the question is can there be adulterations when we get concerned about the mineral concentration in our soils and what sprays and chemicals and fertilizers and disinfectants do with our minerals in our soils? Obviously not all algae are created equal, but my mind is thinking that if its main job is to clean up, are we going to get the benefit of the cleanup in that strengthened algae because of the environment it was born in? Does that make sense?
Well, I think you may. I just want to clear up for you and for your listeners. When I say algae is the cleanup crew, that's in water, in the sort of environment area. That's not what it does in your body. That's just what it does in water. And that's why I want to be sure people understand the different. What the different spirulina and chlorella, what the different nutritional components, because they're quite different and they do quite different things in your body. When the reference I was making to the water is just when it's in the environment, not in your body. What it does in your body is completely different.
Right, but I wasn't necessarily alluding to what it does in your body. My question is more around how is it actually made? How is the algae born, and what is the mechanics of that? And does the water that it's born out of impact the potency or the strength of when it does go into our own body?
Yeah, the things that so it's hard, like I showed you some pictures. Chlorella is a more complex. I don't want to spend too much time on the agricultural process because it ultimately doesn't. The more important parts of algae are regarding the nutritional value and what it does in your body. The fact that chlorella is grown in a round pond and spirulina is grown in a long, narrow one is not a critical piece of information. The things that make the difference about the quality of the algae is number one, as I mentioned, the water that it's grown in. This is why I urge people to stay away from any algae that's grown in China, because they're not as careful about the quality of the water, and algae will absorb whatever's in the water. That's why you don't want to eat algae from your swimming pool, because there will be toxins in there. And even though you can't see microtoxins, they will be there. I promise you. They're not in ours, because we grow ours in triple filtered spring mountain water. And I found a lab that's actually in Florida that tests for microtoxins, and we never have them in our algae because our water is so clear. The number two thing that you need to be aware of, and this is almost impossible for people to check, is that if the algae was dried with high heat, 99% of it is dried with high heat, because 99% of the algae that's out there is low price, high volume. Most companies that sell algae tablets or even algae powder, they usually have anywhere from 50 to 100 other products. They just aren't watching the ball. This is all I do. I am 100% on board with algae. We sell nothing else, and I spend nothing else. My time is only on algae and protecting it and nurturing it and making sure it's safe for our community, and learning more and more about what it does for you. So we are one of the few, if only, companies that I'm aware of that does not use high heat to dry our algae, because I decided early on I only wanted to make a difference in the world, and that meant having a high quality product. That meant having enzymes which were intact. So it's almost impossible for you to find out whether somebody's using high heat, but you can pretty much make an assumption that if you're going to Walmart to buy your algae, I can promise you it was dried with high heat, because it's the financial business model just won't work any other way. Number three is how when they package it. Lots of these algae tablets are in capsules, and I've got pictures where people, companies have been grinding up rocks and shells and just as filler, and there could be other garbage in those tablets or binders, and so we don't use any of those. Ours is one ingredient. Again, we do third-party lab tests here in America by an FDA approved lab to prove that there's nothing else in our algae except algae. And there's so many things that could go into tablets or capsules, and they don't have to put it on the label, and so it could be causing more damage than good. And the fourth thing is the packaging. Chlorella, or both the algae, have the highest concentration of chlorophyll in the world. We're going to talk a little bit about the importance of chlorophyll, but chlorophyll gets leached out by sunlight, and so you need to be sure that whatever package that your algae is coming in is intact. And our bags or packages or boxes, all the different varieties are 99% UV protected. So between, and there's different strains of algae. There's a lower strain of algae that has less nutrition in it and less protein. And we always start with the highest strains of algae. As I said, highest quality water, no heat, no binders, and really careful packaging. And then we do this third-party lab tests. I think we're the only ones I'm pretty sure we're the only ones in the country that do third-party lab tests here. We get the lab tests from our suppliers in Asia, but I have to be double, triple, quadruple sure that what I'm giving my docs to prescribe literally to their patients is safe for them, and it's safe enough for newborns. So those are the things. And I would like to also point out, I personally, in my company, EnergyBits, we are the only ones educating consumers or practitioners about what algae is and what it does, and providing the science. I've read myself about 3,000 at this point, 3,000 NIH articles, and I tried to condense them. And everybody else is selling stuff on Amazon and selling stuff in Walmart and wherever, Whole Foods. But who's educating you? Me. It takes a lot of time to dig through those research papers and rewrite them and try to understand what's going on, because we found that people were loving our product. We fuel NHL teams and Olympic teams and marathon runners and it's I will go through the why there's good value in what we sell, but sometimes they would say, well, it was getting a little expensive, so we tried a cheaper version. They always come back because they don't get the same efficacy. They had to use 5 or 10 times the amount to get the same value out of the smaller quantity, because, the enzymes were dead and the lower strain of algae wasn't as high quality. And I'll just do a little small segue. I got an email last week from one of our doctor's wives, Dr. Joel Kahn, who's a heart surgeon, and he loves our products and sells our products, and his dogs love them too. They love the chlorella particularly. And so his wife emailed me and says, it was getting a little pricey, so we tried a cheaper version from Amazon, and the dogs refused to eat it. Even the dog, she says, I'm so glad my dogs have such great vision, and they know a quality product when they see it. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah. Cheap is expensive. And I do find that what you just went down and explained applies to almost all things on the market. And I won't say that it's apples to apples, because yours is not a supplement, it's a food source. But even more important for a food source to be properly handled so that what you're getting is effective, which is a good segue to, you talked about pH and tissue oxygenation and the importance of alkalinity. So maybe we can start there, Catharine, in terms of, first, my question would be, how does the algae increase the pH, or why is it increasing the pH, or what is it doing inside our body once it's treated so properly with the painstakingly manners that you get it into the people's mouths, literally?
Yeah.
And do you ever have trials where you suggest that your clients take their tissue oxygenation with the pH, whether it's a saliva or urine, and do before and afters with your products to see if their oxygenation is actually going up? So it's sort of a two-part question.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the second one first, because that's the easier one. We're so tiny. Trials are not even possible. And I quite honestly, we're so inundated with so much pressing demands for answers that, because there's so much science about algae, I don't need to recreate anything. There's already 100,000 studies documenting, and I'm sure there's different ones on pH. I don't have access to everything because it's just, I think that's part of the problem. There's literally too much information about algae. So we will probably never do trials on that until we're, $100 million company and can afford to do that sort of thing. But, that's not, I'd be thrilled if when we get to that stage, because I'm planning on building a big company, because there's a lot of people that need help. And I'll get to the pH now, although I do want to be sure that I address the differences between the two algae, because they are quite different in what they do in your body, and the way that they affect the pH is probably a little different as well. So I was so grateful that my sister's oncologist recommended that she change her diet to this pH alkaline diet, and people may not even know what that means. So food, anything that goes on in your body has an effect on your body, and there's a scale of 0 to 14, 0 being acidic and 14 being alkaline. And whether it's cortisol, emotions, acidic food like dairy or processed food, or actually animal protein too, it has an effect on, when it's metabolized by your body, it has an effect on the pH of your cells. Now, I'm going to talk about blood pH, and I'm also going to talk about cellular pH. Let me address cellular pH first. So your cells need to be just slightly alkaline, which is 7.1 pH, which is just slightly above that middle point between 0 and 14 to be healthy. And the reason you need that slightly alkaline, because that is indicative of oxygenation being available in the cell, that the cell is functioning properly, that the cell membrane is porous, which allows nutrients in and toxins out. And Otto Warburg is a German scientist who won a Nobel Prize back in 1941. He's passed away since then, obviously, but he won a Nobel Prize for discovering that cancer can only exist in an acidic environment, because cancer grows using an anaerobic process. And when you have proper oxygenation in your cell, that your cell metabolism, your cell respiration is aerobic. So your cells need to have that slightly alkaline condition to facilitate that. And when they become too acidic because of either too many toxins or too much acidic food, or too many negative emotions, which change the different pH, it's an invitation for disease, cancer to start taking root to grow, because it encourages bacteria, which it makes the environment more acidic. It prevents proper cellular communication because the cell membrane is no longer permeable. It increases inflammation at the cellular level. So maintaining that that slightly alkaline state is very important to your health, and yet 99% of the food that people eat is acidic. Sugar is the worst. Anything white, anything packaged, any dairy. You can't live in a bubble, but I encourage people to, use the 80-20 rule. Try to be as healthy as you can 80% of the time, and then go out and enjoy yourself the other 20%. But regardless of whatever you do, because algae is the most alkaline food in the world, because it has the highest concentration of chlorophyll, especially the chlorella, which we'll talk about in a minute, it has this great neutralizing effect on your blood, and which we'll get to in a second, and on your cells. So even if you are not eating well, it will introduce more alkalinity and bring you back to homeostasis, which is where you need to be if you want to be healthy. So that's the sort of cellular pH. Now your blood needs to be even more slightly alkaline. It needs to be at 7.34. And this is really interesting because when your blood becomes too acidic, if your blood became too acidic, let me put it that way, you would die instantly. But your body is so intelligent. It knows that it needs to neutralize any acidity or you would die. And so what it does, good old Mother Nature, it will pull minerals that are stored in your bones, in your cells, in your organs, potassium, magnesium, calcium, to neutralize that acidity from the high, the dairy and the meat and the processed foods. So, but the problem is, it happens instantly, thank goodness, or you would die. But if that happens over and over and over again, because you may not know, but your bones are where most of your minerals are stored. Think of them as a bank for your magnesium, potassium, and all the other good minerals, and they're alkaline. So when you're constantly eating acidic food, you're constantly pulling minerals out of your bones, which can, for women, is easily leads to osteoporosis. And it also is a drain on your immune system, because it's constantly pulling out important minerals like magnesium, which are used for over 3,000 metabolic processes, is pulling them out to neutralize the blood. And that drains your immune system so that you aren't ready for defending. It's not able to defend you as well as it could from any invader, which is why my sister's doctor wanted her to have an alkaline diet, so that would not be happening to her. So again, algae, because it is especially spirulina. Spirulina is, I'll tell you in a minute, is a bacteria. It does not have a cellulose wall. Zero. In fact, it was the first life on Earth, and they've documented that. So not only does it have a rich profile of phytonutrients and chlorophyll, it gets into your bloodstream almost instantly, and all the nutrients, the 40 vitamins and minerals, the high concentration of plant-based protein, and this great enzyme called superoxide dismutase gets absorbed instantly into your bloodstream to help neutralize any kind of possible acidity that may have thrown off your pH balance of your blood. And that there is nothing in the world that can get into your bloodstream as fast as spirulina. So it's very restorative to the pH of your blood.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I joke around where I've told this to clients before, where think of it in this case in terms of the algae as your metabolic sponsors or your metabolic pimp that pays your bills. And now you have all this extra overhead that you weren't able to pay before. And you start to see bone density increase.
Yes.
You start to see your mineral status go up. You start to see your energy, hence EnergyBits.
Right.
So it's quite amazing. That's a good explanation of what you gave us.
Well,
I would say
I like to call Algae, both of them, your nutrition insurance, because it covers you with 40 vitamins and minerals, highest protein in the world, highest chlorophyll in the world. It gives you everything to give you a base level of everything that you need. I mean, you could live on this forever and not have to need to eat anything else. We don't encourage you to do that, but you could. In fact, the nutrient profile of spirulina is virtually identical to mother's breast milk, but it gives you, so when you're taking algae every day, regardless of what else you eat that day, the rest of it can be for entertainment. It can be for social reasons. It can be for whatever you choose, but at least you're giving your body what it needs to perform optimally. And, we all have health insurance, but this is truly your nutritional insurance.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it. And I think it's good where if what I wasn't necessarily alluding to for you to run clinical trials, I think it's important because a lot of the clients that I work with, they're frustrated, Catharine, because they're told that nothing's wrong with them, although they feel so tired that their blood tests are normal. And I think that you've provided so much good, useful information of the education. The other thing that I think could be really helpful is for them to actually go out and buy pH strips and measure their, no one does this. And I was actually happy to hear that a lot of doctors at the A4M meeting where you and I are thinking, well, it's not as integrated as we'd like it to be as other conferences that we go to. But I was surprised to hear them suggesting to measure your pH. And that gives you a baseline of how acidic you are. I mean, if you're tired and you're exhausted, you got to already assume guilty until proven otherwise. Measure your pH, start to make a dietary change and get more plant-based foods. But try EnergyBits and see your pH levels go up, which is just anecdotal, and it'd be something for people to actually see.
Yeah.
They're not always sure if it's working. I'm kind of feeling a little bit more energized, but I'm always the skeptical person, and actually see objective markers, I'm sure would change. So as far as if you want to get into the difference between the two algae, that's be a good,
Okay, terrific. And the other reason why I call algae your nutrition insurance is because the sad reality is our food no longer has nutrition in it. It has calories, and it has garbage canola oil if it's a processed food. But even if you're eating organic, the soils are so damaged and overcropped, and we grow a lot of the produce in countries far, far away. So they harvest them before they're ripe because they have to travel so long and sit in so many warehouses. So they don't want them to be ripe. But that's the ripening is where all the extra enzymes come from, all the nutrients. So you can be eating, and anybody who's buying arugula these days, have you noticed it goes yellow after about 2 to 3 days? That's because it didn't even start with much chlorophyll in the very beginning. You could eat a roomful of arugula, and you wouldn't get the same amount of chlorophyll that you would get from probably 5 or 10 of our little tablets. In fact, algae has 500 times more chlorophyll than arugula. So you need something. If the food you're eating isn't giving you, and I promise you it's not, giving you the nutrition that you need to be functioning mentally and physically optimally, you need something else. And the other problem is, we have so many toxins in our bodies. I read a statistic recently that said the average adult has 800 toxins in their body. 800. Our immune systems weren't built to support that kind of toxic load. And so it's a great segue, because I want you to know that spirulina gives you all the nourishment that you need for optimal performance, and chlorella pulls out toxins. So let's jump into it. So spirulina, as I mentioned, is a blue-green algae, and it is a bacteria. It's called a cyanobacteria, no cellulose wall. Now, spirulina is known to be energizing, which is why we call our spirulina EnergyBits, because it's energizing from the high concentration of protein. It's the highest concentration in the world. Ours is 64%, which is about 3 times the amount of as protein as steak, and it's already in amino acids. Now, when you eat animal protein, your body needs to break it down into these tiny bite-sized portions called amino acids, and that can take 2 to 3 days for your body to gain access to the aminos. And then you have collagen, which are in what's called peptides, which are clusters of aminos. But actually, algae even up levels collagen. It's got more collagen than collagen powder. And then you have algae, which all the proteins already in amino acid. I tell people it's like a get out of jail card free. I mean, it just you can almost hear it going whoosh as it gets into your bloodstream. So that's number one, a high protein and no cellulose wall to get rapid absorption. The other amazing thing is that it is loaded with B vitamins. B vitamins are what convert glucose and aminos into energy. So that's why you have this rapid conversion, although it's not a rush or a crash like you would get from sugar or caffeine, because there is no sugar or caffeine. And actually, there's no carbs in either of the algae either. So they're ketogenic. They're fantastic for diabetics, great for low blood sugar, and because they get into your bloodstream so quickly, they satisfy your hunger. Spirulina is also loaded with essential fatty acids like omega-3. A lot of people take fish oil. I can't take fish oil. I tried for years, but I would always be burping it up, and you never get the repeat from the spirulina. Once you swallow that, man, that stuff stays down and you're good to go. And a lot of fish oil goes rancid after you've purchased it. And I tell people, well, where do you think the fish got the omega-3 from? Well, they got it from algae. So they just consolidated it in their body. So you can cut out the middleman. Our algae never goes bad. We have an expiry date of 3 years, but you can keep it for 10 if you wanted. So between the high rapid absorption, high protein, B vitamins, essential fatty acids, it also has boron, which helps with synapses and mental coordination. It releases nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, which opens up your blood vessels so your blood can flow faster and bring rich oxygen and nutrients to your brain. So all of this is very energizing. Now, I will tell you, it's not energy like you would, be like a Superman or running a huge marathon. In fact, you almost wouldn't notice it although if you were taking it before a workout, you would notice it because you would run further or run faster and you wouldn't have even noticed it. Or, if you're a weightlifter, you would lift more or lift longer and wouldn't have noticed it. The energy you get is what I call quiet energy. You just don't fatigue. It's like you just had a great night's sleep, and it never goes away. And you never have to have more of it to achieve it the next day either. You just take it every day, 5 or 10 tablets. If you're anemic, 2 or 3, we do try to recommend 5 or 10 to feel any difference, although there is also no upper limit. We have NHL players who put 75 spirulina in their smoothie before every hockey game because they need access to that high energy. So spirulina is usually very good. We recommend you take it in the morning, in the afternoon. You could have it as a meal replacement. For anybody who's trying to lose weight, there's 1 calorie per tablet. So if you had 20, it could be like a meal replacement for 20 calories, 0 carbs, high protein, 40 vitamins and minerals. Lots of times when you go on a diet, you cut out some of your food groups, and you also cut out quantities of food. So very often you're tired and you start craving things. And the cravings are often related to deficiencies, things that you're not getting, like especially mineral deficiencies. So that doesn't happen when you're taking the algae because you've got all the vitamins and minerals that you need. So it's really nourishing and could replace your multivitamin, CoQ10, fish oil, magnesium, potassium. So it's not only efficient nutrition, it saves you money and it saves you time. One more thing I just want to point out, and we'll get to it later in more detail, is the energy that you get is not just the mental energy or the physical energy. This is probably more what Dr. Joel deals with metabolic energy, which is cellular energy. In your cells, you have something called mitochondria. And they're called little organelles, little peanut-shaped things that generate what's called ATP. ATP is what energizes everything in your body, your breathing, your heartbeat, your digestion, just every single metabolic process is energized by the mitochondria. And there's a enzyme that I mentioned earlier called superoxide dismutase that is exclusively found in spirulina that protects the mitochondria from being getting damaged from free radicals. So this gives your mitochondria the opportunity to generate more energy for you so that you aren't fatigued during the day, so that you can sleep better, you can think better. And it's a very, very important aspect of spirulina. This particular enzyme does not exist in chlorella, but it has something else that we'll talk about in a minute that's good for your mitochondria too. So they're realizing all disease, all aging is a cause of mitochondrial DNA damage, everything. For the last 10 years, we've been talking about inflammation being the cause of everything, which it is, except now they're realizing that 90% of that inflammation is mitochondria inflammation. All roads lead back to mitochondria, and all roads lead back to algae. And I have some cool stuff to tell you about that later on. But spirulina, very, very nourishing, very energizing, very satisfying, great meal replacement, and it's safe enough for newborns, pets, grandparents, kids. It's unbelievable. So everybody who wants to, fill their nutritional gaps, and we all have them, this would be my suggestion for sure.
And of course, without further ado, going into that, and what's the big difference between that and chlorella, the other type of,
yeah. So chlorella developed, spirulina, by the way, is first life on Earth 4 billion years ago. Chlorella developed about 1 billion years later, and it does belong to the plant kingdom. So it is definitely in the vegetable world, whereas spirulina is a bacteria. So chlorella has the highest chlorophyll in the world. Remember, I said spirulina had the highest protein. So what's so important about chlorophyll? Well, I could go on for days about chlorophyll, but I'll tell you a couple of things. Remember, we talked about the importance of your blood pH. Well, the other important thing is your chlorophyll. You can't see this, but the chemical composition of chlorophyll is virtually identical to the chemical composition of your hemoglobin. The only difference is that there's an iron atom in the middle of your hemoglobin, and in chlorophyll, it's a magnesium atom. So chlorophyll builds your blood. They've used chlorophyll for centuries for this purpose, for injuries, for surgeries. Even as recently as World War II, if they ran out of blood for transfusions, they would give the injured liquid chlorophyll because it would build their blood. So that's number one, because your blood is your highway of oxygen and nutrition. And if you have healthy blood, you're going to have a much healthier body. Number two, chlorophyll is a fat-based pigment. Remember, I mentioned earlier that you need healthy cell membranes in order to have a healthy cell. And those cell membranes need to be porous so that nutrients can get in and toxins can get out. And we've always been told to take omega-3 and D3 and vitamin E, because those are healthy fats that will keep the cell wall porous. Well, it turns out chlorophyll is also a fat-based pigment. And I discovered that because I would take spirulina and put it in a bowl with water, and the beautiful blue pigment would disperse evenly through the water. But when I did the same thing with chlorella, the chlorophyll wouldn't disperse, it would just clump. I did this probably 20 times until I checked my science, and sure enough, turns out chlorophyll is a fat-based pigment. And the reason why it's important for you to know that is because it heals your cell walls as well as omega-3 and D3. And, Joel and I are on the same boat about, telling people maybe D3 is not so great as we've been told it is. But, and so the best analogy I give to people is that, when your windows are dirty, you can't see out and sunlight can't get in. And so think of chlorophyll as window washers for your cell walls. It keeps everything healthy so that nutrients can get in and toxins can get out. So that's number two about chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is also very just generally cleansing to the colon, and there's a lot of colon cancer. So this really helps correct that. The other amazing thing about chlorella, which makes it different from spirulina, is that hard cell wall. Remember, spirulina has no cellulose wall. Chlorella has the hardest cellulose wall in the plant kingdom, and that hard cell wall attaches to toxins. It's a chelator. It pulls out lead, mercury, radiation, aluminum, which is in vaccines, by the way. It pulls out alcohol, wine, beer, doesn't matter what it is. Athletes love it because it pulls out lactic acid. So we work with biological dentists because they use it to pull out mercury when they pull out any of their patients' fillings. The United Nations use chlorella when after the Chernobyl disaster, and also at Fukushima, because it pulls out radiation. So chlorella will pull out anything, spores from mold, Lyme. And by the way, it's not just the toxins in the outside world, although there's, gazillions of those. Your body is constantly remodeling itself. Every day, you have 30 trillion cells that die in your body. That's a good thing because your body is constantly changing. That means that if you have a health condition now, you can recover because your body will rebuild, but you have to give it the good building blocks it needs to make sure that that journey has a positive outcome. And algae is certainly a way to do that. But what I want you to know is that when your bones are rebuilding and your organs are rebuilding and your stomach lining is rebuilding, where do you think the old stuff goes? Well, you got to pull it out. You got to remove it because dead cells are just as toxic as other toxins. And I remind people, if you don't take the garbage out from your house for a couple of days, it starts to get pretty smelly. Well, the same thing happens in your body. Think of it as a goldfish bowl that you haven't cleaned out. You need to be constantly cleaning out those toxins, but that have been generated internally or from external sources. So chlorella, because it's a natural detoxing agent and loaded with chlorophyll, which is cleansing, taking it every day is like giving your body a shower from the inside. We all take showers on the outside, but taking chlorella every day, and I encourage people, don't just dabble with these algae, take them every day. I promise you, you will be so grateful in 5 or 10 years, or even, 5 or 10 months when you're feeling so much better. So that's one of the other important things about chlorella. It's a detoxing algae. It's a wellness algae, the high chlorophyll. It's has the highest RNA and DNA in the world, which helps your cells regenerate in a healthy fashion. And because it's a cellulose wall, that hard cell wall has fiber in it. And fiber is necessary to feed your gut biome so that it can, the bacteria can generate the short chain fatty acids, which help with your gut biome and your mental health. So, and it has so many other nutrients in it, like the highest tryptophan in the world, which is the precursor to melatonin and serotonin. I don't want to go on forever and ever, but so chlorella is a wellness algae, a healing algae, a cleansing algae, detoxing. And so we recommend it. You can take it any time of day, same with the spirulina, but definitely before bed, because your body goes through a detox and repair cycle when you're sleeping, particularly in your deep alpha sleep. So if you have chlorella in your body while you're sleeping, it's like you're getting your beauty rest and you got the cleanup crew in there, getting rid of all the old dead cells and fixing some of the DNA and RNA. I know it's a bit of a simplicity, but it also stimulates peristalsis, which is bowel movements, because elimination is part of the game. You've got to put good stuff in and you've got to get rid of the bad stuff. And when that process is working, then you start to achieve more homeostasis, and you'll just have more energy in general. So it's so the two of them work quite beautifully together. In fact, we created another brand called EnergyBits, which has the two of them blended if you could only buy one bag. But if you can buy them separately, it gives you more control, because if you're hungry and you want energy, that's only going to be spirulina. If you are having a health condition and you want to pull out toxins, if you want to have got Lyme, or that's really only going to be, or you want to pull out lead or mercury, whatever, that's only going to be chlorella. By the way, I've read a number of studies that say that the chlorella, the detoxing ability of it is elevated when you eat it with cilantro. I don't know why, but it does. So it could be cilantro oil, it could be cilantro raw. And the other thing I would like to mention is that chlorella actually tastes pretty good if you put sea salt on it. I love to eat mine with I'm big on pistachio nuts these days. The pistachios is a flavor with salt and vinegar, or macadamia nuts, because both those nuts have very few lectins and oxalates. And by the way, anybody who is concerned about lectins and oxalates, there are none in the algae. Lectins and oxalates are types of sharp proteins that are found in many plants like kale or spinach, or even almonds, quite honestly. And the plants develop these as defenses to stop predators, bugs and animals from eating them, because they taste really bitter when they eat them. But algae didn't have to develop those kinds of defenses, because it originated in the ocean. So it's never been and never will be a plant-based organism. So it doesn't have any lectins and oxalates. So anybody who's carnivore or paleo, this is for you too, because a lot of people do go that route when they want to avoid the what's called the negative nutrients in some plants. So if you take them separately, spirulina in the morning, in the afternoon, anytime you have a lull in your energy or your hunger, great for meal replacement, great for intermittent fasting. They will not interfere with your fast. They're both ketogenic, both zero carbs, both have 40 vitamins and minerals, but one is an energizing algae and one is a healing, cleansing detox algae.
Yeah, well, great answers. I guess it's safe to say the Japanese knew something about the algae that was early adopting it for us Westerners, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I point out that the Japanese have the best longevity, lowest cancer rates, lowest obesity rates, and great skin and hair, and they take it every single day.
So as far as the doctors that you sell to, well, two parts of the question: are they giving you feedback on whether the spirulina or the chlorella is more of a mover than the other one? And then the second question is, why did you adopt the business model of just only approaching healthcare providers?
Yeah. I don't have an answer for the first one. People buy them for different reasons. If you're looking for filling nutritional gaps or improving your energy or getting your kids the nutrients that they need without fighting with them to eat vegetables, maybe spirulina is the answer. If you're an athlete, certainly spirulina is the answer. If you want mitochondria health, spirulina is the answer. If you're wanting to support your immune system, pull out toxins, improve your sleep, chlorella is the answer. So everyone's got different purposes. We sell, quite honestly, it's a horse race. They're neck and neck. Usually people buy both of them, or they buy the one called EnergyBits, which is a blended, because we need both of them. You need to get rid of toxins and trash in your body, and you need to improve your energy at a cellular level and your mental and physical levels. So that's number one. The reason I chose to go this way is because it all comes down to why I started the company. I actually never had plans to start a company. I just wanted to help my sister. That was it. That's all I wanted to do. And then when I learned so much about plant-based nutrition, I thought, as I said, I felt this obligation to, when nobody else was doing it, I thought, well, I'm going to give it a try. And then when I started teaching and saw the problems people were having with time and not being able to get access to vegetables, it was just not happening. I thought, I'm a problem solver. I like solving problems. You give me a problem and I am just the happiest girl when I find a solution. But this was not an easy solution. I mean, it's taken me 12 years, because then once I found the science, then trying to figure out how to explain it. So two things happened. One is when I started working, I was invited to my first chiropractic conference about 6 years ago. Dr. Pompa invited me. And I had previously been working mostly with athletes up until then. And they weren't really so concerned about the science. They just wanted to know if it worked. So when I got to the chiropractic conference, they were interested in the science. And as someone who has spent a lot of time researching the science, to have a willing audience to learn, to listen, not just listen, but to learn and to appreciate the science, made me feel like I'd found my home. So I started pursuing them a little bit more. And then I also realized, well, this is where I want to be anyways, because I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this to help people be healthy. And since then, with the COVID and everything, thank God, more consumers are taking their health into their own hands, and they're realizing there are more non-invasive solutions, more gentle, nature-driven solutions, and where people like you will give them more hands-on care. So I like the thought that my product is being explained one-on-one to someone. I'm not looking for, to dominate the world. I mean, maybe one day, but I only once the knowledge of algae has reached a level where it's hit the mainstream, because you've got to explain something new. And I love I mean, I could talk about the science and help people 24/7. I just absolutely love it, because I know that this stuff works, and I am determined to leave this world better. This is my path. There is absolutely no question. I would like to do it a little faster, but I'm thrilled. I mean, we've turned down CVS. I've turned down venture capital. I was on Shark Tank, although I didn't do it because I, wanted their money, because I would have turned it down even if they invested in it, but or wanted to. But I did it just for the visibility. I just want people to have a more open mind to understand there are safe things out there if you go to the right sources, like practitioners like yourself, and heart-driven, indie companies. Although I will say everybody in the keto world, the metabolic, we're all, as passionate. Most people are as passionate, maybe not quite as passionate as me, but they're right up there. We're here to help people be healthy. We're not big corporations just trying to squeeze out an extra dime and don't care that it's not good for you. We're here to really make a difference. So I'm quite happy where I am. It's a slower road. It's more work, but it's, this is my joy. So I just want more people to learn about algae so they can start benefiting from it. Like, I don't know if I shared with you the fact that, I'll be 66 this year. I'm getting close to 70. And so I'm no spring chicken. I am the poster child for what algae does for you. So I've been taking it for 12 years. I couldn't live without it. So I do want other people to, enjoy the same benefits.
No, that's great. I think that when there's so many win-wins in it, Catharine, in terms of it's a valuable resource that we don't know about, and it's untapped. And why do we not know about it? And I gotta let the world know, and this is my mission, and I'm driven, and you can definitely hear it in your answer. So I'm excited to share it as well. So coming to a close here, I always like to ask our guests, the name of the podcast is The Truth About Your Health. And so what truth about your health that now, especially I guess with everything that we've talked about so far, do you wish you would have known when you were younger that would have made maybe a difference, or would have accelerated your learning curve, or just made a positive impact on your body now that you know what you know, when you didn't know what you knew?
Yeah. Well, aside from algae, which made a huge difference in my life and my sister's life, I, like most of us, grew up assuming that the medical profession knew everything. They had all the answers, and they would tell me what to do with my body. And it has become clear to me that is upside down. The person that knows what to do with your body is you. And unfortunately, and there are some good medical professionals out there, and they don't intentionally try to harm you, but the problem is their education is so limited, and it's they're so indoctrinated by the pharmaceuticals companies, and there's no motivation for them to, or time, quite honestly, for them to, and to learn new things. And I've also learned that they are not allowed to recommend things that don't come with their own clinical trials. And nutrition just doesn't have clinical trials. You don't do clinical trials for broccoli or algae. So I have learned, and it was a very hard lesson to learn. I kept assuming everyone knew better for me, and they don't. And I also assumed they had my best interests at heart, and they don't. They don't do it intentionally, but our society has structured the medical and the insurance world in a way that's so profit driven that it squeezes out the personal touch and the personal needs. So I take pride now that I educate myself on everything. I question everything, and I've learnred to trust myself more. Even if something works for somebody else, that doesn't mean it's good for me, but until I test it. So it's a long road, but when you finally get to the blend that works best for you, that's when your health will start to improve, because you're putting you first and you're trusting you. And if you just have to trust your intuition, give it time. That's the other thing. Just give it some time. These medical conditions don't show up on a rocket ship overnight. They took years and years to develop quietly and insidiously in your cells, and then they start manifesting in pain or something, and once to get your attention, and once they've got your attention, now you're panicking and you want to get rid of it immediately. Well, you have to unravel the cause, and it takes a while. And people say, well, if you're driving from New York to San Diego and maybe you took a wrong turn somewhere along the road, you just get back on the road. You don't give up. So you're going to hit some dead ends, and some things are not going to work, but don't give up, because you are worth it, and your health is worth it, and you can achieve it. Because remember, I said your body is constantly regenerating, but you're the one that puts the food in your mouth, and you're the one that goes out for a walk, and you're the one that goes to bed at the proper time. So you're in charge, not the people in the white jackets.
Oh, that's a great answer. And the body's incredibly resilient. Like you said, if you give it the things it needs and you remove the things that it doesn't. So I appreciate the time and the insight you shared with us today, Catharine. I will make sure that in the show notes and on our website, and we will be able to get the listener the product if they want to get that. And I know you're nice enough to give me a unique discount link, so they'll be able to save money on that. So it's not really a link. Just come to the website, EnergyBits.com. And when you go into the coupon box, type in the word Dr. Joel, all one word, no spaces, no dots, just Dr. Joel, DRJOEL, all one word, and you'll get 20% off everything. And just the large bags are the best value. You get 1,000 tablets in the bags. And using that quote from NASA that said 1 gram of algae has the same nutrition as 1,000 grams of vegetables, I did the math and figured out that 1 bag of our algae tablets with 1,000 tablets has the same nutrition as 551 pounds of vegetables. So the bag is, a little pricey. It's $125, but with the Dr. Joel discount, it brings it down to about $100. But if you were buying 551 pounds of vegetables at $3 a pound, that would have been $1,500. So it's very efficient nutrition. And it will last, a bag, if you took 10 a day, will last 3 months, and it will replace vegetables, snacks, meals, multivitamins, fish oil. So you will ultimately save money. You'll certainly save time, and you won't have to cook, clean, or eat as many vegetables unless you want to. Right. And not to mention, factoring into that math, Catharine, is the the cost of chronic illness and insurance premiums and
Yeah.
testing and so forth and so on. So anyways, I could talk to you for on and for
Okay.
more and more, but at some point we got to call it a show.
Yes.
And I appreciate your time and your insight. And I look forward to seeing the future success of EnergyBits
Thank
as
you
you
very
guys
much.
continue to grow. Yes.
right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.